Well, good evening, race fans, and welcome to this, the season finale of the inaugural season of GT7 under the PSGL brand. My name is Webbo, and I'm here to take you through this final race of the season, and we're looking forward to seeing who can make this final one count. Now, I must get out of the way very, very early on. An apology for the connection tonight. We seem to have problems. We've tried various players to host the session. I think there may be something slightly amiss with the GT7 servers rather than the players themselves, but all the same, we will persist. We will try our best with that apology in mind. Now, we go into today's race with the championship leader, Pashi. Unfortunately, the championship leader up to the previous race, Pashi, who is currently in second place. Unfortunately, Pashi has taken ill with an injury and is unable to continue racing for us this week. So that means that the new championship leader, Hasnain, goes into this finale with a distinct advantage here. He has 54 points, and we'll just get ourselves viewing the racetrack, and I'll walk you through who we have on track and why. So, as I say, Pashi in second place on 51. We have Hasnain on 54. H Racing Green also on 51 with 3 podiums to his name so far out of the 5 races that have been completed. We also then have Brownski, who is within a shout of the championship, but that gets rather complicated, and I'll take you through that in the race if that eventuality turns up. Petty is in 5th with Jamie in 6th. Fred, YRS, Bonnie and Toby your top 10. But we're out there at the circuit of the Fuji circuit with I thought I was expecting to see the no chicane variant, but the chicane appears to be there, so that's what we're here for. If you are joining us on stream and you're interested in GT racing, please leave your comments and tell me who you're here to support. Tell me if you find a new favourite, and otherwise how you find the evening's racing all together. Also, let me know if you spot something that I'm not talking about on screen. It's just me. We have to solo commentate over GT racing because there's not enough room in the lobbies for more than one commentator. And also make sure that you're following us on socials. The links are at the top of the live chat, but at PremierSimGL and at WebboRed5 for my commentary as well. Steve-O joins us as a guest reserve driver here tonight to make up the numbers. I think the summer season is very much underway for everybody, and also with drivers unable to maximise their championship positions. Some of them have decided to exit, but we do have a championship fight on our hands between Hasnain and H Racing Green, but also the remoter possibility of Brownski being there for us. So here we go then, down the main straight of Fuji. The weather is raining, of course, because it's Fuji. So we've got Japanese Gr.3 circa 2007 vibes going on. So down through Daiichi corner, which is the turn 1. Turn 2 is just an acceleration zone, and we head towards then the almost 90-degree right left-hander of the Coca-Cola corner, and under the bridge now is a very tricky 100R, where the drivers will try to hold the speed, hold the throttle, sort of midpoint throttle in 4th gear, as Steve-O is aptly demonstrating. Down then to the 3rd gear, hairpin will hook into 2nd gear as well, given the traction difficulties under the weather conditions. So that was the hairpin. We go through turns 7 and 8, and then this is the 300R of turn 9 before the very tight turn 10 Dunlop corner, where we will go almost 150 degrees right, then left, back onto the main circuit then for turn 13, trying to get as much apex as possible. And now we have that blind entry in a GT car, the A pillar on the car absolutely in the way of you seeing the apex of that one, and then round then to the final corner, which is Panasonic, turn 16, almost 180 degrees, tightening apex before trying to find somewhere to put the power down. The onboard is glitching, Kian, I'm afraid, because we do have a bit of a PlayStation Network or Gran Turismo Network error going on. and that is causing some lag. So unfortunately we're going to try and do our best with this, and the drivers are going to give each other a little bit of an extra wide berth, but it's not as if we're racing around a tight confined street circuit. Steve-O goes provisional pole then against H Racing Green, and we have Toby next, who is in third position. He's in the Turner livery car and just experiencing some snap oversteer there. Then we've got Jamie currently in fourth position, but Steve-O joining us as a guest driver tonight, already right on the cusp. There goes Hasnain, championship leader at the moment for this season finale, and he takes a position on the front row for the feature race, but there is still time for the drivers to complete this lap, and I think one more during qualifying, and we'll ride with Hasnain then. We've had a lap with Steve-O. Let's ride with Hasnain as he tries to snatch that pole position. He's got his championship rival H Racing Green one place behind him and alongside him on the grid as well. I'll walk you through qualifying and then we'll get into the championship connotations, but frankly the championship question is very much in Hasnain's mind here, given that he has the lead, so a win, a second and a fastest lap will guarantee him the overall victory of this first season here of GT racing on PSGL. There will only ever be one first GT champion at PSGL, so this will be one for the record books nonetheless. So Hasnain then getting through into the final sector. See if the car looks any better. Chase view, I'm anticipating it does not look any better in chase view, but we will persist and do our best. We'll get plenty of outboard shots through the race, but I like to see the detail of the driver's laps. He goes wide slightly on the final corner, does Hasnain, and sprints to the line then. This is the Asahi Kese team livery, and across the line then Hasnain stuck down in third because H Racing Green has gone onto provisional pole as we have 1 minute remaining of qualifying. I think this will be the final lap for everybody. Jamie in the Aperture team colour scheme from Portal 2. His lag is less than most drivers, so slightly more bearable watching on Jamie's car. So that is qualifying done and dusted. I think H Racing Green, excuse me, I have to exit for a second. There we go. H Racing Green got the pole position against Steve-O. We have a 1 hour race to come for you, and we're waiting for our start. It looks like a false start potentially there for H Racing Green. I think it was a false start for H Racing Green. Got away from the lights way too early, and he's stuck down in the final position with Steve-O taking the lead. Jamie sneaking up against the championship leader of Hasnain, who runs super wide down through the first turn, and that opens the door for Jamie, who gets up the inside. So it's Steve-O, Jamie and Hasnain with Brownski. H Racing Green recovering to fifth somehow, some way. That presumably is some sort of lag. I don't see a false start warning on the car, so I think he did get away okay, but runs wide and hops over the curb. But it's, as I say, Steve-O, Jamie and Hasnain in the lead of this race. Brownski is in fourth position for the Slag Brothers Racing team. And hi to Seth as well, who joins us to watch the racing. Like I say, if you've got a driver in mind that is your favourite, then do speak up and let me know. Always good to know who our drivers' supporters are. Medium tyres on Jamie's car helped him get that launch away, but that was the same strategy for Steve-O. We're expecting a decent amount of moisture to fall on this Fuji circuit today, so the drivers will be having to contend with all manner of different strategies. So medium tyres is the way that they're going. The sort of middle of the road option, it seems, for the majority of the drivers here, expecting the rain within the first 8 laps. 5 to 8 laps, I imagine. Could be even sooner than that, but they've also fueled up fat with fuel as well. Tyrone says, which game? This is GT7, Gran Turismo 7, Tyrone, and you're very welcome along to enjoy. This is the very first season of GT racing on PSGL, and we're very excited to crown our first champion. So it is, after lap 1 and the start of lap 2. Steve-O, Jamie and Hasnain, the championship leader Hasnain, with his rival H Racing Green, who has somehow managed to get himself up towards the front, but he's side by side there with Bransky. Good friends off circuit, I know, Bransky and H Racing Green, but usually that just means that you race even harder than you do with strangers. So H Racing Green fighting for the championship here, and you can already see the first raindrops falling on the circuit. Now this is Fuji. It's a long racing lap, and that spells disaster for everybody's strategy. It'll be into the pits pretty soon because the rain is really coming down very quickly, and you have to react quick around Fuji, otherwise you are stuck out there on very difficult tyres. You can see the splashing occurring, and while we have got a major weakness of the servers at the moment, which is causing this slightly difficult to watch lag on the cars, the weather effects are sublime, as you'll see if you watch back the Nürburgring race from last week. It was atmospheric and beautiful to watch, but tonight the drivers aren't really thinking about how pretty it looks. They're thinking about how to get around the next corner and prepare for the following one. So what does the leaders do here with Steve-O coming out? We will find out very late where the drivers are peeling off into the pits. Steve-O shuns the pit lane for this lap. Is anybody feeling like being brave and making an early dash into the pits? Of course, it will favour the drivers towards the rear of the field because they will have the least to lose. Petty in 8th is still on the main straight with the rest of the drivers, so also shunning that pit lane. So the medium tyres at temperature, the drivers obviously feeling like they can run on those medium tyres in the wet conditions. Steve-O leads by 0.9 of a second as they start lap 3, with Jamie 0.9 of a second himself ahead of the championship leading Hasnain. And then we've got H Racing Green 1.2 seconds further back, with Bransky, YRS, Toby and Petty making out your shortened 8-car field for tonight. And Berrican Trip says cars are jumping. Yeah, that is. I will have to keep doing this as people make comments, but we do apologise for the state of the connection tonight. We seem to have a fairly universal lag issue across different drivers with good connections typically. So I think what we've got going on here is almost certainly a Gran Turismo server error or throttling. So we have got some problems, but we're going to persist because this is a season finale. This is a championship decider, so we can't really skip this one. I think if we'd already crowned a champion, I think we perhaps would have postponed, but it's all important. The drivers have put in a lot of practice for today, and they go around to complete this lap, and still nobody goes into the pits off the dry tyres at this stage of proceedings. Let's go down to the foot of the field and see if anyone is planning it. No. Round past the pit lane, they all go for the start of lap 4, and that's a personal best, in fact, for Petty on that lap, and he's bringing himself back towards P7, which is Toby's Turner liveried car. So the Corvette of Jamie chases the Jaguar F-Type of Steve-O. Hasnain just needs to focus on staying ahead of H Racing Green to seal the title here, but if H Racing Green does get ahead of him, we'll be looking at some fairly complicated mathematics to work out who is going to prosper and become the first champion. But we've got a full hour of racing to find all that out, so it's a little bit premature to start counting back things like victories and previous results. But Steve-O leads from Jamie and Hasnain. H Racing Green really starting to catch Hasnain now in the wet, and it almost looks like the weather has settled down a little bit, and the rain has stopped for a few moments. So the drivers are absolutely going to have to deal with mixed conditions tonight. It's not quite the monsoon levels that we experienced last week in the Nürburgring, but maybe we will still see some unknown weather. You see H Racing Green taking almost a wet racing line around the corners to try and get himself good exits here on the next run. I think now though he will have a good opportunity here to slipstream up the back of his championship rival Hasnain. Peels out to run alongside, and he's got the inside line for the first corner. So this is the championship pair it looked like that was a nice, easy pass for the Mercedes versus the Lexus on straight line speed, but the cars do tend to give up that little bit of performance on one aspect of the track versus another. So it does mean that Hasnain needs to focus on his corner exits and his where his car is stronger. But at the moment, that puts H Racing Green in a good position for a potential first championship and first champion of PSGL GT. Sadly, we have not got Fred to join us tonight. Fred is unable to join due to presumably the same server error that everyone is experiencing. And another note, if you're tuning in to watch Pasci tackle this championship, unfortunately Pasci was injured this week and is unable to race, and we send our best wishes to him, and unfortunately that is just one of those things. He has impressed throughout the season, but cannot be here to take on the rest of the drivers in this final. So Steve-O leading then as a reserve driver at this early stage of our race, but racing without any kind of championship worries. It's a very different story for H Racing Green, Hasnain and Bransky, who are currently 3rd, 4th and 5th respectively. Through the final corner they go then, looking for a good exit, which H Racing Green doesn't quite manage, but I think he got a better exit in fact than Hasnain did on that lap. Still no sign of any pit stops at this stage. Bransky dropping away now from the battle at the top 4 of the drivers hit there. He's now 4 seconds back with a very hard chasing and fast in a straight line YRS, who's in the sister Mercedes to H Racing Green. We saw the kind of speed he had versus the Lexus. How does it fare here against the Subaru? It's better, and he's good on brakes, but it looked like the Slag Brothers Racing Subaru managed to get himself a good turn into the corner. YRS completes the move though up to 5th, and I wonder how much speed he was giving up to being stuck at Bransky's speed, whereas the racers ahead of him, of course, going a little bit quicker. So fastest lap at the moment lies with H Racing Green. That could be important later on. Hasnain could do with that fastest lap for the championship, but we'll ride with the drivers and see. 10 minutes down, 50 to go, so there's a lot of weather, there's a lot of strategy to play, and the tyres are being burnt through here despite the cold track temperatures and wet track surface. Certainly H Racing Green and the Corvette of Jamie, everyone on roughly similar tyre wear it seems, so they'll be begging for a change in those conditions to firm up what they decide to do when it comes to the tyres. And I'm struggling to understand sometimes why the drivers who start on medium tyres don't underfuel the car, because surely the car will be, you'll get better tyre life out of the mediums on a lighter vehicle, and you'll also have to stop because the mediums will run out under a full tank of fuel anyway. But there we go. Hopefully someone will give me that information and at least give an opinion as to why the drivers are fully fueling the cars while starting on anything other than the hard tyres, in my opinion. Steve-O's starting to struggle now, and it's half a second separating himself, Jamie and H Racing Green in turn, the top 3 of your race so far. This is race 8 of the inaugural PSGL GT season. Thank all of you for sticking with us. I do think we've got some drama to come and some excellent weather effects to enjoy. Some championship. So Diogo says all the drivers start with the same fuel. That's an interesting development for me, so thank you for that. I presume that is mandatory then, or default setting on the vehicles. That makes a lot of sense if that's the case. So H Racing Green now really catching Jamie and starting to do what he was doing before with Hasnain, which is find a clear piece of track in front of him, start on the outside, start on the inside of a corner, and try and find a better exit where possible. Just keep the car in front guessing, keep him looking in the mirrors, and alternating around. And hey to Pasci, I don't know if you've just joined us, but we've been sending our best wishes to you and our commiserations that you weren't able to join us in the driving seat, but welcome aboard in any advice or insight you can give us would be very much welcomed. H Racing Green peels into the pit lane, and so does Hasnain behind. So he's decided now it's raining enough, I think, to consider some wet weather tyres. You can certainly see on the back of the Corvette at the bottom of the main straight, it is really starting to be an issue now. The spray coming out the back of Jamie's car. The time has dipped down into the 1 minute 40.6s, 41.6s for Jamie. He's had a really rough last lap, but Steve-O in the Jag is still doing very well on those tyres. So the bottom 5 cars have all pitted. The bottom 6 cars have all pitted. One after the other. H Racing Green is back out, and he's gone onto the full wet tyre. He's not even considering the intermediates tonight, so that's really interesting from H Racing Green, who currently has the dry weather fastest lap, and that, as I say, could be very, very important later on. Diogo says rip the first 2. It is going to be a problem here as the drivers try to get round, and there you can see Jamie off the circuit and trying to get back on the circuit, and there's the Jaguar as well. It looks like tandem spins and hot tyres, and the Jaguar and the Corvette struggling massively. Good call from Diogo, who called that one very early. Really, really hard for the drivers to stay on circuit. This is Fuji after all. You would think that they would have built better drainage on the circuit after all the rain that they have to deal with, but it is a challenge unique in itself, driving around Fuji in the wet. So Jamie took the lead, but the gap from Steve-O, who hasn't pitted, to H Racing Green, who has, is now 1.4 seconds, and it's really not. There he goes, takes the second position on the circuit, and is catching Jamie by about a mini second. There's Jamie off the circuit in the final corner, the Panasonic corner, turn 16, and I think H Racing Green on traction will get past the unpitted driver of Jamie. There he goes into the lead of the race and streaks ahead. Toby managed to get the jump there on Steve-O. On Hasnain, in fact, in the pits, so presumably put less fuel in the car, and Toby's gone onto intermediate tyres and appears to be that little bit quicker at this stage. So he's looking for a quick low fuel stint on the intermediate tyres. Cars are aquaplaning on the main straight. It is treacherous, and that is the problem with those intermediate tyres. Hasnain streaks past Toby, and Toby will be ruining that decision now, I feel. That was a 1:52 outlap for Hasnain. For Toby at 1:54, and he continues to aquaplane, and this is going to be the most difficult lap for Toby to get round on the intermediate tyres. He played a gamble, he got a place up, but it's not working out, and down the order he goes. H Racing Green's championship on track at the moment, 15 seconds into the lead, but he's going to need some very, very careful watching from us as we try to see what the drivers are up to. Jamie and Steve-O now in the pits. Jamie coming out, I think. What was his selection? He's gone onto full wets, and you can see the puddles splashing over the apex of the corner as well. Steve-O with a penalty. I think he crossed the white line on pit exit. That's a 3-second penalty, mandatory. And H Racing Green and Hasnain's lap time starting to equalise now a little bit. So that's certainly very interesting to see that the times have equaled now that they've both got their wet tyres on. No new fuel for H Racing Green. He's stuck on just over half a tank, anticipating again either another change in conditions or wearing through the wets. But it looks like Hasnain just picking up the pace now in this final sector. Let's see what H Racing Green's lap 9 time is as he comes up towards the start-finish line. That's the penalty marker where the drivers will take their penalties, take the pain, and the car's slow. And there we have a 59.0 for H Racing Green, and the Lexus, the Asahi KES18 Lexus of Hasnain, leading the championship currently, coming up to the penalty marker and the start-finish line. What was his time? That was a 59.7 lap 9 for Hasnain. YRS, he's dropped 10 seconds to Hasnain as well, but has made up track position against the likes of Jamie and Steve-O, Petty and Toby. What is Toby up to? Did he miss the pit lane? Looks like Toby missed the pit lane, and hit the barrier at quite some speed. Now what happens here for Toby? That is smoke rising out of the car, and I wonder, did Toby decide to retire from the race? I think he did. I think he's disconnected Toby out of the race then, and that leaves us down to, I think, 6 drivers, unfortunately, and we've got all kinds of Japanese calligraphy being written on the graphics, so apologies for that. But as the driver retires, I think that's just something that's affecting the game's ability to cope. Let's look at 3 drivers who are nice and close together. The 2 Subarus, the Slag Brothers racing team of Petty and Bransky, both on the wet tyre here. And the advantage of seeing your driver in front on wet tyres struggling around is that they have that opportunity to learn from their fail, learn from their braking points, see where they're going wrong and adjust accordingly. YRS appears to have refueled a little bit in the circuit there. Luke Etheridge says, wet Fuji title decider. Exactly, it is like Fuji all over again. It's like every time the F1 drivers go to Fuji, almost. But I was saying Shazer 2007, but absolutely, 76 is very similar. It is very, very wet and super treacherous out there. Just ask Jamie, who after being in the lead of this race, waited one too many laps to pit, and is still struggling, even on the wet tyres. You can see the water coming out over the puddles as Steve-O is braking down into the final into the hairpin at the moment. But H Racing Green continues to lead by 15 clear seconds from championship rival Hasnain, who may take the title between them. See how the braking performance looks down into turn 1, the Daiichi corner. And it looks like the Lexus managing to stop fairly well here. The Lexus, a very well balanced machine. Doesn't quite have the top speed strengths, but that balance will do him well through this this treacherous phase of the race. It is H Racing Green, 15 seconds in front of Hasnain, who is 13 seconds himself in front of third place Petty. Then comes YRS, Bransky and Jamie in this title decider. GT cars looking awesome in the Wayne, also looking great going sideways coming out of the turn 7 corner, which is normally a nothing kind of corner. But we also saw aquaplaning on the main straight. I don't know if anyone's going to be vomiting into their helmet or crashing into children on the racetrack, as Mark Webber remarked. Looks like Petty has distanced his teammate in the Subaru, so Petty putting some time over on Bransky, who I'm assuming has had more than just that off-track excursion. Really struggling, these drivers, but the track is the conditions are due to change and alternate through this session, and if Ayrton Senna's race around the European Grand Prix of 1993, the European Grand Prix at Donington Park, was anything to go by, he said, just always be on the right tyres for the current conditions. Don't anticipate what the weather might do. Don't try and stay out on tyres that you're on the wrong for the conditions. Just keep changing tyres and be on the right ones. I think he made 4 or 5 pit stops that day, but H Racing Green currently only the 1 pit stop, just medium tyres, 2 wets so far, and the times, his last time was much better than Hasnain, so he's opened up the gap by 1.4 seconds, a further 1.4 to now 16.6 seconds. Is H Racing Green starting to find a little bit of balance and a little bit of optimal lines through the corners here. They'll be experimenting, going off the main racing line, the dry racing line at least. This will be a difficult one, stopping the car into turn 10, the Dunlop corner. But he gets it to the apex, manages to stay within track limits on the exit, avoid those curves. You don't want to be unsettling the car and getting airborne and then slamming down into a puddle. It's going to do you no favours at all, and this sector of the racetrack is just horrible in these conditions. Tight hairpin after tight hairpin after decreasing radius and then increasing radius of this final Panasonic turn 16 corner. really tricky. And there, just to indicate that it is indeed the Panasonic corner, is the advertising hoardings. So away then to finish lap 12 goes your leader, H Racing Green, now 17.2 seconds in front of Hasnain, and in a great place to win this race. Just check on my my notes here. So H Racing Green has to win the race with Hasnain second to win the championship. However, if Hasnain picks up the fastest lap through tonight, then Hasnain will be champion. So while the fastest lap is certainly not under threat at the moment at 38.9, we may get dry conditions right at the very tail end of this race. So it could be the case that that is still under threat. It doesn't matter how far up into the lead H Racing Green gets, and he almost wants to start considering whether he needs to manage the gap rather than be pushing too hard and end up on a different strategy. The wet tyres lasting well, the fuel much less so here in the Mercedes of H Racing Green, the Invicta racing car. Hasnain has bags more fuel and has got much greater options if the race stays wet for the vast majority of it, or this wet you should say. But his lap times at the moment not quite where he needs them to be to threaten H Racing Green's lead of the race. H Racing Green doing everything he can. He's got the fastest lap and he's got the lead of the race. So championship is very much on for him. Sorry to say that we don't have Pasci here on the track. At least he's watching at home. He's unable to race with us this week, but it would have been great to have a three-way title decider, but we'll have to make do with a double header. This is Petty currently managing the Subaru very well indeed and catching Hasnain, and you can see those 1 minute 58 lap times. So he is going some 1.5 to 2 seconds quicker than Hasnain at this stage of the race, but it's certainly not easy, and he's going sideways, left, right and centre. The gap's opening up on the circuit quite considerably. Drivers who were close battling are now no longer. YRS, Bransky, Petty, all gapping, and Jamie has managed to find some pace as well. Let's check out Jamie's last few laps. She's down in the 59s and 2 minute mark, but he's catching the drivers in front of him, so it is working pretty well. This is Steve-O reserving. He was leading the race before the late first pit stop compared to the majority of the field. But he's actually on the wet tyres going around in 58s. He's on the lead pace here on the wet tyres. So really interesting to see how he is going to compare. A slightly less than ideal lap for H Racing Green last time out on lap 13. But Hasnain is not going any quicker. So we'll ride perhaps with Hasnain and Petty and see if Petty can do the favours for our admin of our league, H Racing Green. And if H Racing Green does secure this championship, I think for me that will be the very first championship I have commentated over where the admin actually wins. It takes so much of their time coordinating the drivers and everything that they give up a lot of practice time to admins, and I think anybody neutral in the audience will join me in wishing H Racing Green well, because it's no better reward for being the admin of a league than to win the championship. And as I mentioned before, to become the very first PSGL GT champion will be something quite special indeed. H Racing Green though, we'll see what this lap time looks like as he is encouraging the car towards the corners very gently, just breathing on the steering wheel and hoping that the car sticks, trying to avoid the puddles. Is he heading towards the pit lane? No, he's just trying to avoid the puddles that have been affecting the drivers. That was the 2 minute lap 14. It's not going to plan at all. But talking about not going to plan, here is Hasnain second in the championship, losing time to Petty, hand over fist, who is on the wet tyres. Same tyres as Hasnain and H Racing Green, but putting in much better lap times. Let's see what this one is, as his gap to Hasnain down to 5.3 seconds now, with almost half distance underway. Once they're halfway around this 15th lap, we will be at half distance. That was a 57.5 for Petty, easily the fastest driver on the track, and really enjoying driving this this track. I don't know whether he feels like he's enjoying it, but when he looks at his deltas, I'm sure he'll be buoyed on by that. Most everybody down in the 59 or 2 minute marks, including YRS through that lap. Bransky also a 2 minute mark, and a good lap there for Jamie as well. Question of what could have been had Jamie and Steve-O pitted on the same lap as everybody else for those wet tyres. They lost that pit stop delta and some by running on the mediums at the wrong time. H Racing Green's lead now nearly 18, well, clear of 18 seconds, and Hasnain picking up the pace. But is he off track? I think he might have been off track temporarily there, because he just lost 0.8 of a second in one mini sector to Petty, who is catching the championship leader. The Slag Brothers Racing team, I think, is still in the lead of this championship. I haven't had updated team standings since Nürburgring, but I believe Slag Brothers Racing, so named after the Wacky Races team, if you're wondering, and the livery is reminiscent of the Stone Age vehicle that the Slag Brothers used to drive. And Petty then is going to come across the line. Hasnain, we've got H Racing Green in the pits. What is H Racing Green planning on here? Is this a change to intermediate tyres potentially? But Petty is catching Hasnain now, so we'll find out H Racing Green's tyres very soon. It's too early for a fuel stop for him, but he feels like it's stopped raining, and you have to say that the visual evidence at least would support that. I don't know that a dry line is developing yet, and there's a massive puddle that Petty is ploughing through on the way into the Coca-Cola turn 3. So it's clearly not fully dry. H Racing Green has tried to brave on the intermediate tyres, so let's see how those are handling. The car will feel very, very different to him. He put in a 2:38, of course that was his in-lap, and the timing was counted before he stopped in his pit box to change tyres and add fuel. He's gone to just over 3/4 of a tank of fuel. Presumably his experiments on the intermediate tyre would suggest that they will last at least that much of a tank. Diogo says, not sure if Inters are the best choice. Well, two drivers decided to go on Inters on this lap at least. And here we have H Racing Green. Not sure if your chat is quite up to date with my voice, but yeah, H Racing Green has gone for the intermediate tyres. See who else went for them. It was Jamie betting early this time. Doesn't want to be caught out being late this time out. So let's see. Does Hasnain decide to cover off H Racing Green this time? No, he's just thinking about it. Tempted to go into the pits, but he's not going to do it. H Racing Green in third place now on the intermediate tyres, and seemingly coping pretty well on these tyres. We'll see on his next lap how his lap times compare. It's possible he was feeling some overheating on the wets. Seems unlikely with the amount of standing water on the circuit, but across the line he goes. That was a 1:47, so that in itself should tell you that the intermediates are absolutely the tyre to be on. As the lap times start to drop into the 150s, he felt right, it's now is the right time, and he put in a quicker time on an outlap than the wet tyre wearing front two of the track at the moment. So H Racing Green guessing right this time and bravely making the decision as the de facto leader prior to these pit stops. Now, whether Hasnain and Petty have got the mental acuity at this stage to be watching their time gaps to H Racing Green, or whether they are just fully focused on staying on circuit is only they will be able to answer. But they will see that gap dropping when they do choose to look. Another apology, I must mention that that we appear to be having some PSN or Gran Turismo server problems tonight, hence the lag, hence the slightly queasy driving experience for you. But thank you for sticking with us. You are all very much appreciated here by everyone at the PSGL GT League for sticking with us and enjoying the racing come what may. Thanks to Diogo as well, the guy with the most chat in the in the coverage so far. He says in 2 to 3 laps we'll be able to go on dries. Well, I'm not sure whether the conditions will continue to change on the drivers. Hasnain and Petty are betting on that for sure, but their gap is being reeled in, not least Hasnain's by Petty himself, who's now got that gap down to 3.3 seconds, but also H Racing Green still in the late 1 minute 40s, whereas Petty and Hasnain certainly in the 50s and onwards. So a 2 second a lap gap is definitely going to help H Racing Green defend that de facto lead. But if he can't catch, they may pit both for dry tyres at the same point. So he's going to have to reel them in at a slightly increased rate if the track continues to dry out here. It was a brave decision to pit on that lap, especially when he had the track position he needed to win this race and the fastest lap he needs to win this championship. The gap is 15 seconds to Petty. Make that about 15 seconds from the lead, 11 seconds to Petty now. That is his gap, and Petty is catching now 2.4 seconds to Hasnain, and this would really do the favours to H Racing Green if the two drivers will start to battle and slow each other down at best, make contact and go off circuit at worst with this amount of lag on the track. It's definitely not a night for making 50-50 moves, that's for sure. We'll ride with Petty, who's now down to 2.1 seconds off the lead. Hasnain, I don't think is going into the pits. I think they're both going to ride out these wets until we turn to dries. Very, very interesting as Petty gets a 1 minute 50. Behind him on track, H Racing Green with intermediate tyres is going to manage what on the end of lap 18? A 49.5, so it's not a huge difference. Seems to be going across track to cool the inters maybe, or avoid a big puddle. So on lap 19, it's Hasnain, Petty and H Racing Green way out in front from Bransky, Stevo and Jamie. Very different tyre strategies. Bransky still on the wets, Stevo also on the wets, and we know that Jamie stopped for intermediates on the same lap that H Racing Green did. This is YRS in P7, the tail of the field at the moment, also on the intermediate tyres. But it's not proving to be the better tyre at this stage by enough to make the decision to pit cut and dry. But if there is an elongated stint here of a drying state, the wet tyres will overheat and the drivers will start to rue that decision to stay out. Just under 1 second now. Hasnain to Petty, and under 10 seconds back to H Racing Green. So it's getting very, very tasty, this battle for the lead, as we approach 2/3 distance with still plenty of differing conditions to come. We've got random conditions selected for the end of this race as well, as far as I recall. The drivers have done plenty of simulations. They knew the weather forecast in advance, and now 7.75 of a second behind is Petty as they start the main straight. He'll get some slipstream, but there'll be a definite difference in top speed between the two drivers. Petty managing 162, which is about even with the Lexus. Right at the very end of the power band though, he does appear to catch the Lexus, as H Racing Green has got that gap down to 8.4 seconds now, and can start to see the drivers on the main straight. So towards Coca-Cola, very, very high pressure on our two leaders. No more so than for Hasnain, who is defending the championship lead on this, the season finale. That was a difficult trip through the hairpin for Hasnain, and Petty is now tempted as they head towards 300R and the Dunlop corner to action a potential pass here I don't know if he's got the confidence to do it on the brakes, or it's better to do it on traction out of one of these longer apex corners with a wide entry. Skips across the curb bravely, but they've lost 1.5 seconds on this lap so far to H Racing Green as well. So 0.3 of a second with Hasnain staring in his mirrors. It is very difficult to go fast while looking in your mirrors. So you want your eyes fully focused forward at the next, and this is a good wide entry for Petty. This is smart thinking. Put your rival offline and go for a mega exit. There's a tiny touch between the drivers. I don't think they can help that with the amount of lag on the circuit, and the gap is down to 1/10 of a second as Petty tries to get another bout of slipstream. They both come into the pits, and H Racing Green will go past them, so he's still happy on the intermediate tyres. What does Hasnain and Petty do? Are they trying to miss the stint on the intermediates as H Racing Green takes the lead on lap 20 from Petty and Hasnain with a good earlier lap? That was a 1:45, as we're definitely in the range then for the intermediate tyres to be functioning really well here. What does H Racing Green do? Hasnain's gone onto hard tyres. That I just saw flash up. Hard tyres on Hasnain, going for a 10-lap stint at the end of this race with a half tank of fuel. What, I wonder, does Petty do? Hard tyres also. So H Racing Green, unless he is watching the coverage and listening to me while this is happening, he will not know what tyres they are on. He's going to have to monitor their gap really, really carefully and take a view. How will the hard tyres perform on an outlap versus warm and well up to speed intermediates? That will be the real test here. Currently, the gap is 17 seconds, H Racing Green, to his main championship rival Hasnain, back where it was before the pit onto intermediate tyres for H Racing Green. 17 seconds is not enough for a Gran Turismo Group 3 pit stop, because you need to put fuel in the car, although it's possible H Racing Green could get to the end without fueling here. We'll see what kind of fuel rate he's living with, but the gap is dropping, it seems. H Racing Green to Hasnain. So H Racing Green, does he decide now to pit and put the hard tyres on and cover off the strategy? Yes, into the pits he comes. We'll see if he knows what the strategy is of his rivals. I don't think he's quite as chaotic as it looks. He's on the intermediate tyres on that lap alone. The gap now 15.8 seconds, and I think that Hasnain is going to pass him. Here he comes to pass him on the main straight. Hard tyres on the car, just under a half a tank of fuel. H Racing Green, can't see just yet what tyres he selects. Here he comes on medium tyres, exactly as Diogo predicted. So medium tyres to finish this one. They should heat up a little bit quicker, but I think they'll feel just as much of a handful in the outlap as the hard tyres did. So H Racing Green back into second position now, and on medium tyres to the end of this race with a generous amount of fuel relative to Hasnain. So if Hasnain does need to do any lifting and coasting, but we've got ourselves a 9-lap very, very tasty finish to this race. Petty, despite being on competitive terms with Hasnain before this most recent pit stop, has really lost out on that outlap. His was a 1:43 with a 2:23 in lap. Hasnain a 1:42 with a 2:13 in lap. So it must have been an off-track excursion for Petty, or a difficult pit stop. Diogo says it will be tight at the end. Well, H Racing Green has to manage his strategy now. He's got the gap at 3.6 seconds, but he doesn't need to burn through these medium tyres too quickly. They should be good to the end of the race, but while he's going sideways with the wet conditions, he'll be burning through the tyres too quickly. Mediums front and back for H Racing Green. So just over 3 seconds now separating our two championship contenders. As the track dries, the window will be open for a potential fastest lap attempt at the end, which Hasnain is probably on the wrong tyres for, but Hasnain needs it to secure the championship if he finishes second tonight to H Racing Green. This is exactly what we want, the two championship contenders right up at the front end, battling for the big points in this season finale. to crown our first champion. So Diogo thinks that Hasnain will have a better strategy. Who do you think, if you're watching with us live, who do you think is going to take this win tonight and therefore the championship? Love to hear your predictions. Can Petty hold on to this third place? As things stand, he's 21 seconds ahead of Bransky. Is everybody else on mediums? Jamie is bringing himself up the order little by little. Steve-O is right with him as well, though, and that's not going to help Jamie's bid to run back up towards the front end of the racetrack. Right, YRS finally pits now from 7th on the grid, but we've got 3 drivers nice and close together. But let's focus on the battle at the front, which is now down to 2 seconds, just under, as the medium tyres seem to be performing that little bit better despite the spray coming out the back of H Racing Green's Mercedes AMG. Lots of tyre squeal. And I've got a slight worry here that Hasnain might be slightly under-fueled for this race. 1.9 seconds then won't be enough to pick up a toe from the car in front for the Invicta Racing car team leader, H Racing Green. Another half a second out of the lead H Racing Green takes on that sector. Further back, we've got 3 drivers very close to see. Steve-O managed to pass Jamie quite comfortably. Steve-O unlocking a lot of speed now. The dry tyres have gone back on. He's recovering from that disaster lap. Lap 9 was it, and takes 4th place then off Bransky, who has been having a tough night of it, but is still in 5th place for some good championship points. Hasnain's gap under a second, and you've got to feel now that H Racing Green has the best opportunity here and the best tyres for the end of this race if he wants to defend that fastest lap of a 38.9. They are nearing those lap times, as I think the 37.6 on H Racing Green's car on his docket was an outlap, so it was a shorter outlap, having passed the start-finish line potentially, and it doesn't register as a fastest lap. So he draws right up behind the Lexus. He draws alongside we know the Mercedes is good in a straight line, but they're almost maxing out next to each other, and the Lexus tucks in behind the Mercedes as Hasnain is looking for that inside line. No defense though from the Mercedes as Hasnain will try and retake the lead of this race. H Racing Green round the outside, braving it on the outside as the inside running Lexus is understeering into his door handle, but H Racing Green knows that he's got the better line on the way into this Coca-Cola turn 3, splashing across the exit curb, and he takes the lead of the race. It took a couple of corners, but he's got it done up into P1 with the fastest lap. Is exactly what he needs to finish this race out. He's had better speed at various points in the race, and he's on the better tyre at the moment. Will the tyre wear out before the hards on the Lexus? Will the fuel run out on the Lexus before it does on the Mercedes? Those are our questions with 6 laps to go here in Fuji for this season final, and I can see raindrops. Nothing particularly hard, but certainly a few raindrops on the camera lens starting to develop. I wonder if we're in for even more moisture on this circuit. H Racing Green needs to avoid going through those puddles on the curbs, but he's gapping Hasnain now convincingly with a lot more speed on those medium tyres at this stage of the race through lap 25. So he's also nearing that fastest lap time. He needs to keep trying to put in those fastest laps. I don't know if it'll be his ultimate pace, this one, as he passes Hasnain and had to run offline. No, he is 777 slower than his fastest, than his best time. Hasnain unable really to do anything about the lead. Saving tyres, trying to presumably save some fuel for the end. All he can do now is try a bid for the fastest lap. He's got a gap of 22 seconds to the car behind. I don't think that's enough to make a free pit stop and still come out on soft tyres. So what does he do here? Petty is also on the hard tyres, so will not be quite so much of a threat. But that gap is going to be very important as Steve-O starts to bring himself away from the Bransky-Jamie battle that he was right in the thick of earlier on. Here is Jamie though in the Corvette. Look at the top speed of the Chevrolet Corvette C7. But he's not confident on the brakes. Jamie can't get the move done. He's side by side though with Bransky. Gets the job done before they get to turn 3. Coca-Cola and a personal and a purple sector to boot as well on the approach to Coca-Cola turn 3. Fantastic stuff from Jamie. Well under control now and back up into 5th position and moving his way up the grid. Bransky in 6th with YRS continuing to fight. We've got Mercedes first and last, but last is only 7th, so I don't want to be too unkind to YRS pace here. It's he's been doggedly staying with this to pick up championship points, and we go on board H Racing Green with a new fastest lap of 38.8 this time round, and building the speed and defending that fastest lap from the threat behind. He knows exactly what he needs to do. He needs this fastest lap to be confirmed as our champion, our very first PSGL GT champion. And Hasnain, no real answer here for the pace of H Racing Green with just 4 laps remaining. I don't think he's going to be under threat from the hard tyre shod Petty behind him, but Steve-O is going to try and get himself on the podium, I think. Doesn't quite have the outright pace of H Racing Green, and he's also burning through these mediums a little bit quicker than H Racing Green was. Jamie much kinder on the tyres at this stage of the race. Bransky, I think, saving some performance for later on. Really, really dark skies. The Fuji circuit. Always catch a glimpse of Mount Fuji, of course, right there, right on cue for me. And then suddenly the sun comes out and it's bright sunshine. So this isn't going to help those medium tyres get to the end if the sun suddenly comes out. But that was like night and day. That it was like suddenly the sky, the clouds parted. No sign of the wet weather. Precious little sign of any moisture on the circuit. Looks like we've got full dry conditions now, and another new fastest lap of 1:38.6 from H Racing Green, who needs to now do his best, I think, to save the tyres for the end of this race. He's got the gap that what he needs, and he needs to make sure he's got the tyres for the end. Hasnain, less than a quarter tank of fuel left with 3 laps to go. I think he'll be okay at the current wear rate of the fuel. What about Steve-O's lap? I know he's got some speed, so Steve-O will be a threat to H Racing Green getting that fastest lap. H Racing Green probably doesn't care about the fastest lap as long as his rival Hasnain doesn't get it, and nobody's quite close enough to him. In fact, Jamie driving 9/10 slower that lap against H's time. Brilliant race we've had here, and so 31 laps of this Fuji with every weather condition the game can throw at you. I think shy of a monsoon or a snowstorm. Here comes H Racing Green then to start lap 29. Didn't quite get another new fastest lap. He is starting to peg that speed slightly or treat the tyres. You can see the red boxes coming up on the front tyres. They're getting into overheating territory, just cooling now. Hasnain struggling here, but will have tyres to fight with for a potential fastest lap at the end of the race if he's got the fuel, because he's getting close once again. Lap 29 of 31. .2 seconds now, the gap at the front of this race, and no other drivers particularly close to one another apart from P4, 5 and 6. So the Jaguar not able to fully gap Jamie's Corvette, likewise Jamie to Bransky's Subaru. Obviously very, very similar lap times. Steve-O on a 40.6 last lap out. Bransky and Jamie, I think, will be battling this one out for the end of the race, both on medium tyres. Well, all three of them on medium tyres for the end of this one. I think probably hoping that the race finishes as soon as possible. It's been a tough night out there, a long old time for the drivers to focus under very, very difficult conditions. Now they're in to the best conditions they've had, I think, since about lap 2 or 3 when it started to rain, and even then it wasn't bright sunshine, so I think the track temperatures will be building, so not favouring the medium runners towards the end of the race here. Hasnain's gone to the pits. He's going for a fastest lap, I'm sure. I think he's putting the soft tyres on. Whether he needs fuel or not, that will definitely be worth a look. No fuel going on the car, even though he is in fact flashing on fuel. He hasn't gone for the softs. I think that they're not an eligible tyre for the race, but he comes out of the pits right with Petty. Petty could spoil Hasnain's party here. H Racing Green will not know necessarily that the medium tyres have gone on, and the Lexus starting to pull away from Petty here as he starts to feel those tyres on the outlap. Petty could do a spoiler here for Hasnain, but it's the only thing he could do. A really quick tyre stop. That was good work by his mechanics, and this could be his opportunity on the final lap of the race to steal that fastest lap. Racing on fumes almost at this stage is Hasnain, so he'll need a gentle lap here. H Racing Green's fastest lap of a 38.6 is currently enough to see him take the championship. He will cross the line now to start his final lap. He'll see the gap suddenly increase to Hasnain and think, I'm going to have to probably go for it here on this final lap to try and defend. We'll ride with Hasnain, who is managing to stay ahead of Petty. That was such a risk, and he came out almost side by side with Petty down into the first corner, the Daiichi corner. But it's a gamble that's paid off, and now it's about maximum attack, minimum fuel, best possible tyres under the options available tonight to the drivers, and it's now or never for Hasnain. We'll ride with him for a few sectors and see how his time compares. If he can start getting purple sectors, we'll find out pretty soon in sector 1 if he can manage to get that gap. But this is for the championship. Second plus fastest lap will do it for Hasnain. Crosses the line, it's a personal best, but it's not. Purple through sector 1 for Hasnain, and he runs wide on the way out of turn 3. All he can do here is fully send the car through this final lap. This is a qualifying lap attempt here for Hasnain. It looks like H is about to finish the race. We'll see the sector 2 time for Hasnain, because this is where it's all going to be for the championship. Hasnain crosses sector 2 with a purple middle sector. H Racing Green is coming into the final part of the circuit, the final corner, Panasonic corner for the final time. H Racing Green can do nothing else but this. He's raced fantastically with a very, very good strategy. H Racing Green crosses the line to win in Fuji, and currently holds the fastest lap. But can Hasnain spoil his party? Hasnain heading into that final corner now. H Racing Green with the win, but Hasnain needs to steal this fastest lap as we head towards the line. in second position. He will get it if he gets the fastest lap. Heads towards the start-finish line to finish this one out, and Hasnain gets second place, but does not. Yes, he does. He steals the fastest lap. He's got the championship. Wow, with the fastest lap on the final lap of the race. Hasnain, by all calculations I can gather, has indeed become our champion. Let's see what whether we can get hold of him for an interview. But Petty scores a podium, and a very well played podium to boot. Guest racing as a reserve driver with us. Stevo gets 4th position, and Jamie comes home with good points in 5th. Brownski followed him in 6th place, and YRS will get 7th. But H Racing Green with the win. Looks like our champion though will be Hasnain. Here, H Racing Green is super upset with the way it's gone down. It looks like really he did everything possible but just couldn't compete. What a gamble by Hasnain on the penultimate lap to stop for new tyres and come out into staying in that 2nd place. But tremendous work from Hasnain. That is the culmination of our very first championship. Hasnain will be the PSGL GT first champion, and congratulations to him. Hasnain unfortunately will not be able to join us for an interview, which is very sad, but hopefully I can get a couple of words from him via text. But there we have it. H Racing Green with the victory, getting the pole position as well. Couldn't have done any more than that. Hats off to the drivers. Thank you so much to everyone who's been watching. If I can get a word from Hasnain, I will. I will obviously hang on just for a minute. But please like the video before you depart from us today. Subscribe to the channel. You know this is the place for fantastic racing action virtually every day of the week. If you've liked the commentary tonight, you can follow me at WebORed5 on socials, and I'm hoping to get a word here from Hasnain via text. But tremendous work from him throughout the championship. Stole it at the end, took the lead in the championship in the after the penultimate round in Nürburgring, and sealed the deal with an inspired fastest lap when it mattered most. His only opportunity at the final part of this race. Really, really tremendous race, and hats off to H Racing Green and Petty for the podium as well. Just waiting for Hasnain to finish typing his review of this season or the race itself. Yeah, the H Racing Green said everyone was silky smooth because he was the one hosting. So said it was the best of the season. Jamie couldn't disagree more, saying it was impossible to race anyone. So I'll do my best to try and get you some words from our champion before I depart and exit, because it's now or never, frankly, isn't it? It's hard to get it afterwards, after the event. Do make sure, as I say, if you do subscribe to the channel, then you'll know as soon as we launch our 2nd season. The announcement will be made on socials, I'm sure, at Premier Sim GL, and if I'm involved, which I'd love to be, at WebORed5. We'll let you know as soon as we're about to get going with racing. But of course, make sure that you check out the rest of the channel for some great work. Great sporting message here from H Racing Green, who says congrats to Hasnain. He was better all season, and it was good luck that kept him in the hunt as long as he did. He did finally get a pole and a win, and he's really pleased with that overall. I will just hang on because Hasnain is typing away. Whether he's editing and re-editing or he's writing an essay for us, I'm not sure. But come on, man, let's go. Let me have at least what you've written so far. Still typing away, and I'll get there. I hope it's going to be worth it after all. But it was great to see a good sporting congratulations from H Racing Green, also from YRS as well, which was great. Let's see. Hasnain says he never would have dreamed of winning the title before the season. He wasn't the quickest, just happened to get the strategy right and had some good luck along the way. He said H deserved it as much as he did. He was unlucky with how it played out in the end, but very pleased Don't know how much more he'll be near the front in future, but was happy and was able to pull it off. So there you have words from your new champion and your runner-up. We send our best to Pashi as well, stuck with an injury, but hopefully he'll be fighting fit, ready for Season 2. But until next time, from me, Webbo Red 5, and from everyone at Premier Sim Gaming League's GT League, we will all catch you on the next race day.